I speak now from beyond the shroud, from the quiet halls where the dead remember more than the living ever knew. My name was Neareth Stoneward in life, warden of the Northreach, keeper of oaths, breaker of nothing but my own heart. I thought death would free me from earthly grief, but grief follows even here, and nothing stings the dead so sharply as seeing their sons betray what honor demands. I watched from the shadowed realm, as my children, my blood, my pride joined hands, to cast aside the rightful heir, Jorn Stronart. I had loved that boy as though he were my own son, and in truth he was more my son than any of them realized. They should have knelt to him, they should have crowned him, and yet they sent him away, wrapped in false mercy, hiding treachery behind gentle words. Exile, they called it. Mercy. Peace for the realm. But a betrayal is a betrayal even if delivered with a kiss on the brow. But the cruelest part, they did not act alone. They acted under the silent guidance of Brecon the Sighted, the one who sees through ravens and winds and memory itself. He whispered into their minds, altering what they believed to be their own choices. He showed them visions that were not true, possibilities that never would be, nightmares crafted to guide their hands. Under the surface of every decision lay his influence like rot under clean snow. Worst of all, he wove a spell of fate around Jorn himself, pushing him toward an act so terrible it broke the spine of destiny. He made the boy strike down Delora Fireborn, the young queen who sought to save Westoria through flame and firmness. She was fierce, yes, hard, yes, but she was the dragon returned, the hope of ancient prophecy. She might have united the realms. Brecon saw that future and feared it, for in that future, his power held no place. So he led Jorn to her chambers with gentle nudges of memory and dread, whispering that she would burn them all. Jorn acted from a heart heavy with love and fear. He believed he was saving the world, but he was only bending beneath Brecon's hand. When Jiren drove steel into Delara's heart, fate cracked. Even I felt it from the underworld, as though the world above shuddered. Yet her story did not end. Drakarian, her great obsidian-scaled beast, carried her remains across burning skies to the Temple of Embers, the ancient sanctuary where the Ember Sovereign once touched the mortal world. There, her body lay in the sacred firestones. And though the world believed her gone, a whisper echoed in this realm of the dead, a voice older than the mountains, a voice of molten truth. Return her to the world, as wrath returns to the wicked. It was not Delara who called for life. It was her ally among the dead. And her ally was none other than Aerith Stormheart, Joran's father, my old friend, who died long before the truth of the boy's heritage ever surfaced. Aerith begged, the Ember Sovereign pleaded with the same fierce devotion he once held for his homeland. He asked for the queen to rise again. Not for revenge alone, but to restore the balance his own son had been manipulated into breaking, and the Sovereign listened. Fire does not forgive, but it does restore. 3 nights after her body was laid upon the altar, Delora Fireborn drew breath once more. The flames did not burn, heard they crowned her. They strengthened her bones, sharpened her spirit, and filled her with a quiet, terrifying calm. But she did not return to Westoria immediately.
No?
She vanished across the narrow reaches. Far to the east, to the city of Marine, where her once lover and trusted commander Darien Blackwatch still ruled. She arrived wearing the humble name Ella, taken from her mother Raylan. No one knew she was Delora reborn. She swept floors. She scribbled letters. She took insults as if they were nothing more than dust brushing her shoulder. But she was not idle. Through Darien she sent covert messages to Stonespear, the commander of her purified legion, urging him to rebuild their ranks. Not merely replace them, double them. Train new cohorts. Recruit volunteers. Strengthen supply lines. Let no weakness be seen by the sighted one in his far-off tower. Darien, cunning as ever, sent similar word to the Sunsworn generals. They expounded quietly, fought no needless battles, hid their growing might behind the illusion of stagnation. For 3 long years, Delora planned her return. But while she rose in secret, Joran Stormheart fell in sorrow. Sent back to the Frostspire Rampart under the pretended mercy of exile, he found no peace in its towering ice walls. So he left, walked past the gates, past the forests, past the last stones mortals dared step upon. He walked into the realm of endless frost, determined to die far from all who had abandoned him. I watched him vanish into blizzards that would tear the flesh from bone. I watched as he staggered through storms stronger than hatred. I saw his strength wane like a dying star, and then, just as death reached for him, he slipped through a crevice, tumbling into a cavern older than the realm itself. There he found them. 6 titanic eggs, far larger than any dragon eggs Delora ever hatched. Eggs older than kingdoms, older than written memory. 20 inches tall, thick-scaled, shimmering under frozen starlight. Gold, black, blue, silver, red, and the last, a swirling black blue that looked like night swallowing dawn. He touched them as though touching a lost part of himself, and warmth surged through his veins. Dreams followed visions of dragonflight over every corner of the known world. Dreams of freedom, not rule. Dreams of fire that healed and fire that destroyed. When he awoke, he was no longer cold, and the eggs were no longer dormant. I cannot say how the dragons grew so swiftly. Perhaps the sovereign willed it. Perhaps the realm of endless frost feeds the old blood differently, but within 3 years the six had grown vast and powerful. I watched as they hunted whales from the ice shores, tore through yaks, bears, wolves, seals, even the giant birds of the frozen cliffs. 3 he would leave behind, to grow unchecked in the untouched north, but 3 he chose to bring south. Orion the Goldborn, largest of them all, the dragon he rode. Umbrathon, the black-blue storm-winged terror, to guard the eastern frostfire. Imbris the red, named for the first love he lost. And so Joron turned southward, Daelora turned westward. 2 storms gathering, 2 fates kindling. They do not yet know, they march toward each other, but I do. For here in death, where the Ember Sovereign's whispers echo louder than any mortal voice, I have seen the shape of the coming war, and the shape of the coming love. Fire and frost are on a collision course, and the world will tremble when they meet. In the underworld, time does not move as it does for the living. It coils, wins, folds in on itself like smoke rising from a brazier. And so I watched the years pass, both slowly and all at once, as Daelora Fireborn and Joran Stormheart carved their separate paths through shadow and flame. 2 forces being shaped by unseen hands, hers by the Ember Sovereign, his by the ancient blood that slept beneath his skin. But while they labored under their burdens, the world above them changed in ways neither could foresee. The kingdoms of Westoria, already fragile, grew brittle. Alliances that once held firm cracked under whispers sown by Brakon the Sighted. He perched high in his tower of branches and bone, seeing through ravens and wolves, shaping the realm with subtle touches that left no fingerprints. Those who believed they ruled were merely following the paths he illuminated. He feared Delora's return, he feared Joran's awakening, and more than anything, he feared the dragons for it. Dragons had always been the one creature beyond his reach. Beast minds were chaotic, ancient, and hungry. They did not bend divisions, they bend only to blood. Thus Brakon turned his gaze north, searching for Joran in the endless blizzards. But the realm of endless frost concealed its secrets well. The sighted one saw only white storms. He saw a grave of snow and ice. He believed Joran dead, and so he turned his full attention on Westaria. The ruling council, those who had elevated Breccon's chosen puppet to leadership, argued over borders, harvests, and trivial disputes, unaware that a storm built on old oaths and new fire was already gathering. They bickered like children over the crumbs of a feast long turned to rot. They believed peace had taken root. They did not realize peace is merely the silence before the blade falls. I watched all of this with growing unrest. Even in death, even in a place where emotion should fade, my anger grew sharper. The council had condemned the wrong man. They had cast out the one heir who could restore balance. They had stood idle while Brakon twisted the threads of fate. But the living rarely see truth until it stands before them, cloaked in flame. Daelora, Fireborn, in her humble robes beneath the name Ella, continued building her hidden empire. She worked tirelessly beside Darian Blackwatch, who never once suspected the quiet woman at his side had once commanded dragons and armies. He did not know why she seemed to carry grief like a shadow across her features. He did not know why she paused when she walked past mirrors, seeing not herself but the woman she used to be. And he did not know that her modest smiles concealed a soul ignited anew by the fire of a god. While Darian busied himself governing the trade city of Marine, Daelora spent her nights pacing the high tower chambers, writing letters in invisible ink, dispatching couriers cloaked in desert dust, and receiving reports from Stonespear through carefully encoded phrases. Every step she took was deliberate, every move measured. She would not repeat the mistakes of her first life. She would not arrive in Westoria with a shaky claim and a fragile army. This time, she would arrive unstoppable. The purified legion, trained from childhood to obey only purity of purpose, had grown to more than double its former size. Their armor polished like mirrors, their discipline unmatched, their loyalty absolute. The sun-sworn Darian's own fearsome company expanded their ranks in secret tunnels beneath the city, drilling in silence beneath torchlight. Not a whisper of their rising strength escaped beyond the desert winds. It was a conspiracy of loyalty, a conspiracy of resurrection. 3 years passed before Daelora shed her disguise. It happened on a night when the desert winds blew hot enough to make stone sweat. She stood atop the highest parapet of Darian's fortress, staring toward the western horizon where Westoria lay. The moon cast silver across the sands, and for the first time since returning to life, she allowed herself to speak, allowed the truth burning inside her. "I am Daelora Fireborn," she whispered, "and I will take back what was stolen from me." The flames on the torches flared in answer. That same night, in the frozen north, Joran Stormheart made a decision of equal magnitude. He stood beside Orien the Goldborn, stroking the dragon's warm-scaled neck as snow fell around them like drifting ash. The dragon's breath steamed in great clouds that rose toward the night sky. The other 5 dragons circled high above, vast silhouettes against the stars. Jorn had grown strong in the wilderness, hardened by storms, tempered by solitude. He had shed the final remnants of the frightened boy who once loved too deeply and followed too blindly. He looked toward the horizon. Elward Homan knew the time had come. I cannot run forever, he murmured to the sleeping world. I cannot hide in frost while the realm burns. Orien rumbled as though in agreement. Jorn knew the dragons were ready, too ready, perhaps. In the vastness of the north, they had grown freely, unrestrained by walls or men, hunting as kings of sky and ice. They had doubled in size month after month, each passing season making them fiercer, faster, and more powerful than any dragon the histories recorded. He feared what destruction they could unleash if he was not careful. He feared even more what destruction might come if they fell into the wrong hands. Thus he resolved to bring only 3 Southorian Umbrathorn, and embrace and leave the other 3 in the realm of endless frost. He believed it wise. He believed it cautious. He believed it necessary. But the world does not bend to caution. The world bends to destiny. As Jorn rode Orien southward, slicing through storms with wings that shone like molten gold, he felt something tugging at the edges of his thoughts. Not a voice, not a vision, merely a pull, a sense of direction that was not his own. He thought it instinct at first, then he thought it memory. But I knew the truth. I saw clearly from the realm of the dead. The Ember Sovereign had touched his fate. The same force that had resurrected Dialora now knitted threads around Jorn's path. Flame called to frost. Frost called to flame. A collision was inevitable. Dalara herself felt the pull days later as she rode west with a disguised caravan at the Sun's Horn. She paused on the hill overlooking the Amber Coast, feeling something stir in her blood, an echo of a heartbeat not her own. She did not understand it then. She only felt the tugging, subtle but strong, like the first hint of a storm wind before clouds gather. As for Brickon the Sighted, he felt it too. Far in his tower, surrounded by ever-watching ravens, he shuddered as a sudden warmth rippled through the air. It was faint, but to one who could see all possible futures, it was unmistakable. A future he had buried, a path he had sepied, a destiny he had locked away. It was returning. He rose from his wooden throne with a startling urgency, gripping the carved antlers that grew from its sides. Ravens flapped in agitation, filling the chamber with beating wings. No, he whispered. No, she cannot be back. And the boy? The boy should be dead. He sent his sight outward, searching the desert for Dialora, searching the north for Joran. But the flames of the Sovereign clouded Dialora's path, and the ancient storms of the endless frost concealed Joran's presence. For the first time in years, Brickon felt fear. He saw a vision, just a flicker of gold wings spreading across the western sky, and a woman standing beneath them, her hair white as dawnlight, her gaze unbroken. He slammed his eyes shut, forcing the vision away. But the future does not vanish because the seer fears it. The storm had begun. Dalara marching with her armies from the east, Joran descending with his dragons from the frozen north, the realms between them trembling as though some ancient memory stirred in the ground itself. And I, Nearith, Stoneward, dead though I am, could only watch, as the 2 destinies that had been torn apart were now racing back toward one another. Not in peace, not in vengeance, but in something far greater, far more dangerous reckoning. From the realm of the dead, I have learned that moments of great change do not arrive with fanfare. They come quietly, on a breath of wind, on a fragment of memory, on the subtle shift of a heartbeat. That was how the world began, to turn toward chaos as Dialora Fireborn and Joran Stormheart moved across the continent, still unaware of one another's rise. The people of Westoria went about their lives believing the world stable, even calm, never knowing how close the ground beneath them was. For though Dalara rode toward the coast and Joran soared above the snows, their choices rippled outward like stones cast into a vast and ancient lake. Every step, every wing beat, every breath they took drew the world closer to the moment when frost and flame would meet. I watched Dalara first. Her caravan wound through the Amber Valley, a stretch of hills so golden they seemed eternally kissed by sunlight. She traveled in plain wool and leather, indistinguishable from the other travelers in the Sunsworn escort save for the way she held her spine, rigid with determination. Her identity remained hidden even among those sworn to guard her. Only Darian Blackwatch rode beside her with the faintest suspicion brewing behind his sharp blue eyes. He had seen her temper in quiet moments, the way she clenched her jaw when injustices arose, the way her gaze drifted southwest as though drawn by an invisible thread. He had known Dalara Fireborn intimately once, long ago, and though he believed her dead, something about the woman named Ella tugged at old memories. But Dalara kept her silence. The Fireborn bloodline carried many gifts beauty command. A fierce heart but subtlety was something she had learned only in death. As Ella, she had allowed her pride to simmer until it hardened into resolve. She had allowed grief to temper her into steel. Now she moved through marine and the western trade roads like a shadow, unnoticed, unremarkable, unyielding. Ahead of her, legions awaited her command. Behind her, the flame-born priests whispered of omens and returning fire. She felt the world gathering breath. She felt heat in her chest where the Ember Sovereign's touch still lingered, but she did not yet see the full shape of her destiny. Even so, she knew her march would not go unnoticed forever. 3 nights into the journey, as the caravan halted on a sandy ridge overlooking the Copper Sea, Delora stepped away from the campfire's glow. Alone, she walked to the cliff's edge and stared at the distant stars hanging above the black waters. The moon carved silver down her cheek as she whispered, "I will reclaim what was mine." The words tasted of fire and sorrow. She saw herself entering Westoria again, but not with humility this time, not with pleas for allegiance. She saw herself descending upon the capital like a storm reborn, and yet, somewhere deep within her heart, a place she had not yet dared to examine. She felt a lingering ache. The memory of Joran's eyes as he held her in the throne chamber, the gentleness of his voice when he'd once spoken her name, the knife he'd thrust into her heart, believing its salvation. She pressed her palm to her chest, feeling where that blade had ended one life and begun another. "Why did you believe the lies?" she murmured. "Why did you listen to him?" No one answered, only the steady pulse of the Ember Sovereign burning faint within her bones. Far away in the north, Joran Stormheart felt a similar ache, though he did not recognize its source. As Orion carried him southward, slicing through clouds with shimmering golden wings, Joran leaned low against the dragon's neck, letting the wind numb his face. He did not know what pulled him south. He told himself it was duty, or perhaps guilt. He told himself it was time to face what he had done. But deep within him, the blood of both dragon and king thrummed a different truth. He was returning not merely to seek redemption. He was returning because destiny was calling him home. The sun rose behind him, lighting Orin's wings like a second dawn. The dragon roared into the wind, and the sound trembled across every peak and valley of the Frostspire Mountains. The land changed from endless white to forests of frostbitten pines, then to rolling highlands where the chill softened. Joran had lived among the frozen wastes so long that the gentler climate felt foreign, almost unreal. For 3 years he had spoken only to dragons. For 3 years he had slept beneath aurora-lit skies, comforted by the rumble of ancient creatures who had accepted him without question. Now, returning to the world of people felt almost like betrayal. He looked back once, toward the blinding expanse of the north, wondering if he should have remained there forever alone, free, unburdened. But he knew he could not. Not when he still bore the weight of his past. Not when the realms might bleed because he had abandoned them. He did not yet know that the very realms he sought to protect were already slipping into Brecken's grasp. The Sighted One, perched high in his living tower, kept his ravens in constant orbit. He sensed movement from the east. He sensed tension in the north. Though he could not pierce the flame that shielded Delara, or the ice that cloaked Joran, he could feel the world pivoting against him. He wove threads of visions across the kingdoms, planting seeds of fear in the hearts of nobles and generals. He whispered to the council that foreign armies were amassing on distant shores. He hinted that creatures stirred beyond the Frostspire rampart. He sowed discord between lords who had long been allies. Each whisper was small, insignificant alone, but together, they built an atmosphere of dread. Bricken had always known his greatest threat would be the return of the dragon-blooded, so he fortified his control. He watched every raven. He peered into the future so relentlessly that even the spirits of the dead recoiled from the echo of his sight. He saw glimpses, flashes, gold light bursting through cloud, a woman crowned in flames, a city split by a single, terrible choice. But the visions blurred before he could thread them into certainty. He gripped the edge of his throne, frustration crackling in the air around him. "I bent the world to peace," he muttered. "I carved away chaos. Why must they return to unravel everything?" Yet he knew the answer before the question left his lips. Fate resists chains. Fire resists stillness. Dragons resist control. And destiny, true destiny, bows to no seer, no matter how powerful. Meanwhile, Joran continued his descent toward Westoria. He landed briefly on a rocky plateau, overlooking the sea of pale mists. Umbrathun and Embrys circled overhead, their massive wings stirring the air into whirlwinds. Joran looked southward toward the lands he had once called home. Memories flooded him with a force he hadn't expected. Memories of laughter, family dinners, sparring with friends, nights spent dreaming of a future that had never come to pass. He felt his throat tighten. "Do they even think of me?" he whispered to the wind. "Do they regret it, any of them? Any of them?" The wind provided no comfort. Only Orion's low rumble gave answer, a vibration of loyalty and companionship that Joran felt in his bones. "Oh," he said softly, "I have you, I have the dragons, but I still wish the world had been different." He mounted Orion again, setting his jaw. "It won't matter soon. I will face whatever awaits me. If he had known Dylora was alive or born, rebuilding, rising, those words might have weighed differently. If he had known she marched toward Westoria with an army large enough to reshape the realm, he might have turned back to the north to gather all 6 dragons. If he had known the Sighted One watched him with gathering dread, he might have prepared for war, but he did not know, and Dylora did not know, and the realms between them did not know, but I knew. I, Neareth Stoneward, saw the fates of 2 souls rushing toward a crossroads. Neither could escape. I saw the armies marching. I saw the dragons circling. I saw the golden banners of the east rising as the shadows of the north fell across them. The world had been quiet long enough, and now whether it was ready or not, the queen was returning, and the lost heir was coming home. Their paths would cross. Their fates would collide, and Westoria would tremble. I had believed that only the cold winds of winter's crest could silence an entire hall. Yet when Dylora Fireborn stepped into the great chamber, wrapped in a cloak the color of midnight flames, even the fires in the sconces seemed to bow in her presence. Jorn and I waited near the long table, though it was he that she sought, and I only the witness fated to remember all of this until my bones returned to the earth. Her eyes flicked over the northern warriors gathered in cautious ranks, over the stone pillars, the banners stitched in Greyskull, Wolf, and Mountain. When last she had stood in a hall like this, so the stories said, it had been abroad, bathed in foreign heat, surrounded by soldiers who bent the knee at the slightest breath of her commands. Here, in winter's crest, she stood in a world colder, folded in suspicion, steeped in old loyalties that did not move easily. Dylora lowered her hood. Silver gold hair spilled free like moonlit rivers. Some of the men drew in breaths like they'd seen a ghost, and perhaps they had, for it was said that fire could not burn the chosen vessel of the Phoenix Lord, and such claims had always filled our people with unease. Northerners trusted simple truths. Steel could cut, ice could kill, wind could flay a man clean to bone, but flame that obeyed its master. That was a southern fancy, and southern fancies had a way of bringing ruin. Dylora met Joran's gaze. "You called for me?" she said, "and I have come." Joran stepped forward, though not entirely willingly. His feet carried him as if part of him wished to run, and another wished to kneel. I had warned him this meeting would stir old questions he'd been taught to bury, questions the world would not let him ignore forever. "You saved my life once," Joran said, voice steady though wrapped in shadow. "Years ago, when I was still ignorant of who I was. I haven't forgotten. And I haven't forgotten the cost," she replied. Her words sent something cold crawling down my spine. Not because they were sharp, but because they trembled with the weight of memory. She had not come here in triumph. She came burdened, haunted by choices she carried like iron shackles hidden beneath silk. The hall's doors closed behind her, and the echo rolled like thunder. This meeting needed privacy. Too many ears, and a single wrong whisper could shatter alliances before they could be forged. "I returned to this land for one purpose," Dylora continued, "to reclaim what was taken from my bloodline. But I will not burn my way through the north. I came because the last letter I received bore your hand, Joran's." She paused. "It said the world is changed, that I must change with it." Joran nodded once, though the air around him tightened as if the hall itself held its breath. "The north won't kneel easily. They remember their dead. They remember the wars of southern kings. And they've heard the stories about you, some true, many false. But they won't follow a queen who believes the world is hers by right of birth." Dylora's gaze darkened. "It is not only a birthright, it is a duty." "Then prove it," Joran said softly. The room chilled as though the torches dimmed. Perhaps they did. I had seen stranger things since Dylora entered the north's shadowed halls. "I died once," she said, and the hall's silence deepened, "and death returned me. I have risen from fire and smoke, shaped anew by the Phoenix Lord's will. If I must rule, it is because the flame within me compels me forward. But ruling is not what I seek tonight." Joran took a single step closer. "Dan, what do you seek?" Dylora exhaled slowly. "Truth?" And just like that, the walls around Joran, walls he'd spent years building, walls that even I struggled to breach, cracked. She turned toward me then, her expression unreadable. "Lord Stoneward, keeper of northern oaths. You were the one who hid him, the one who lied to kings and priests so he might live. Tell us both now why." I swallowed hard, for the truth she demanded was one I had kept even from myself. But this moment had been inevitable since the day Brecken, the Sighted, first walked into my dreams and whispered of storms yet to come. "The boy was never yours by birth," I said quietly, "but he was yours by blood of oath and loyalty. Joran was born with the fire of the south and the frost of the north in him. We hid him because the world would have torn him apart before he drew his first breath." Dylora's eyes closed for a heartbeat. "His father?" I nodded. "A man of flame, a man who sought to reshape the world. And when he fell, his enemies hunted anything with even a fragment of his legacy." I turned to Joran, whose jaw tightened. "Your mother was my sister Ernoth, and I failed her when I couldn't save her. But I swore I'd save you." Joran's fists curled at his sides. "You should have told me." "If I had," I said, "you would have sought out this destiny before you were ready." And destiny is a hungry beast, Jorn. It chews young men to pieces. He looked away, jaw trembling for just a moment. Then Delora stepped nearer to him, her voice softening like dawn breaking over frost. You and I share more than the world knows, she said. Perhaps more than we can bear. But if we are to stand together, it cannot be built on shadows. Her hand rose, hesitated, then touched his cheek. Jorn didn't pull away. A murmur rippled through the hall. Not a voices of stone itself, reacting to something neither visible nor earthly. The torches flickered fiercely, bending toward Delora, as though drawn to the fire coiled beneath her skin. Enough, Jorn whispered, his breath hitching. I don't want a crown. I don't want prophecy. I just want the North to survive. Delora stepped back, her expression shifting like a tide. And I want a world where survivors do not become tyrants, where no child grows up hunted for their bloodline. Her voice trembled. The queen the song spoke o, the reborn flame, seemed for a heartbeat nothing more than a woman who'd walked through too much fire. It was then that the hall shuddered, subtle but unmistakable. A quake so slight most men would dismiss it as settling stone, but I felt it, and so did Delora and Jorn. A warning, a ripple from a power ancient as the old mountains. Breaking the sighted had touched the world again. Delora looked upward as if she heard a voice none of us could. Jorn's hand moved to the hilt of his blade, though instinct alone guided him. I had felt such tremors before when the world tried to turn its pages faster than men were meant to read. The seer is watching, Delora murmured. He knows we stand together, and he fears it, I replied. No, she said. He fears what comes next. Suddenly the doors of the hall burst open and a scout stumbled inside, breath ragged, face pale beneath his helm. My lady? My lord? He gasped. A rider has come from the western marshes, the dead walkers, the Ashborn. They've crossed the Blackpine Ridge. A chill swept the hall. Delora and Jorn exchanged a single glance, one filled with fear, fury, and something like fate. Then she whispered, The war of fire and frost begins anew, and for the first time since I had taken the stoneward oath, I feared we were already too late. The scout's words hung in the air like a blade suspended by a single hair. Now hall, once murmuring with doubt and restrained tension, fell into a silence so complete I could hear the crackle of torches struggling against the cold draft that chased the messenger inside. The Ashborn crossing the Blackpine Ridge. No tale from a drunken sellsword, no northern myth meant to frighten children, no exaggerated rumor. I had seen enough winters, enough wars, to know when a man was telling the truth. The scout's eyes held the terror of someone who had watched the impossible walk toward him with steady, unhurried steps. Delora moved first, not for spectacle, not to inspire awe, simply with purpose, as if her feet followed a path already etched into the floorboards by fate itself. She approached the trembling scout, laying her hand on his shoulder with a gentleness so unexpected I saw several hardened warriors shift uncomfortably, unsure whether to bow or seek a shield. Tell me exactly what you saw, she said. The man swallowed, nodded, and drew breath, though his lungs rattled. My lady, they came at dusk. The sky was red at the edges, but no sun touched them. A line of figures, pale as frostbitten bark, moving without sound. Eyes, hollow, burning, faint, like coals dying in deep snow. His voice shook. When they walked past the ridge, the mist rose with them. Our horses panicked. Men tried to flee. Some didn't make it. Jorn stiffened beside me. I could feel the tension radiating from him, coiling through the air like a tightened bowstring. His memories of the Ashborn, unlike ours, were not shaped by rumors whispered over tankards. They were shaped by survival. Death had followed him once, and he bore the scars of that day under his armor. Did they see you? Jorn asked. The scout hesitated. I don't know. They don't look. They don't see like we do. But one turned its head when we ran. Just a fraction, as if it could smell us. A low murmur broke out, fear weaving between the men. Fear of the unknown. Fear of an enemy that could not be reasoned with or bribed or intimidated. Fear of the forgotten past clawing its way back. I had lived long enough to know what this meant. The balance of the world had begun shifting the moment Delora set foot on northern soil. The Ashborn were never threats to single villages or border forts. They were omens, warnings. The world's response to forces of fire and prophecy gathering in the same place. Delora seemed to understand this too. She straightened, eyes burning brighter than any torch in the hall. Gather your strength, she told the scouts softly. You did well to return. Then she turned to us. We cannot face this threat divided. The Ashborn are not creatures of flesh alone. They rise when silence reigns, when old magics stir, when prophecy shifts. Her gaze locked on Jorn, and they rise when the world senses a threat to the old balance. He met her stare without flinching, though a tremor in his jaw betrayed him. You mean me? You and me both, she said. Before any argument could spark, the hall's doors opened again slowly this time, creaking like ancient wood grown weary. A young northern acolyte, robes soaked from the nightly frost, stepped forward and bowed his head to me. "My lord," he said, breathless. "The seer sends word." The seer Brecon the sighted. The boyman, whose eyes held the weight of centuries, and whose mind wandered the corridors of time like a restless spirit. He spoke seldom, but when he did, the world listened even when it wished not to. "What message?" I asked. The acolyte lifted a trembling hand, revealing a strip of bark carved with runes so old I felt the air tighten around them. He read, "When fire meets frost upon the wolf's stone, two paths become one. One marked by death and returned flame, the other by blood unclaimed. Together they stand, or together they fall, and the ash will swallow all." Silence again, heavy, suffocating. Prophecy never arrived with comfort. Daelora exhaled sharply. "Brecon wants us to join forces, or he wants to remind us that we have no choice," Joran said. I stepped toward them, feeling the familiar weight of duty settle onto my shoulders like the first snowfall of winter. "We cannot stay here," I said. "Not while the Ashborn march. Winter's crest is strong, but it is no fortress against ancient powers. We must ride to the ridge. See the threat with our own eyes?" Joran nodded. Daelora hesitated, then matched his determination. "I will ride with you." A murmur rose, half concern, half awe. Some could not fathom a queen riding into danger. Others feared what the world might do if she didn't. "Then we prepare," Joran declared. 100 riders. Those unafraid of shadows. Those who still remember the old tales and don't laugh at them. "When we take Drakarion," Daelora added calmly. The hall erupted not with cheers, but with sheer disbelief. A dragon in the north was a sight spoken of only in stories carved into mead hall beams. But I had seen enough of Daelora to know she did not speak of him as a threat. She spoke of him as a companion, a force of nature she understood better than any living soul. Joran looked to her, searching her face. "Will he fly in this cold?" "He flies for me," she replied. And though some doubted, not a soul voiced it. Preparations began at once. Men rushed from the hall, booted footsteps echoing against stone. Orders were shouted, armor strapped on, horses fed and saddled, supplies gathered. The entire fortress shifted from political tension to war readiness. In the span of minutes, Daelora remained in the hall with Joran and me while the chaos swirled around us. Her face was stern, her gaze dissonant. "Joran," she said softly, "if your father's enemies discover who you are, they already know." He cut in. "The Ashborn do nothing without purpose. They're moving now because they sense something stirring in me, something I don't understand." "Blood remembers," she murmured. Joran turned to me. "Neareth, tell me honestly, did you ever believe this day would come?" I looked at him, truly looked at him, the boy I had raised, the man he had become, the storm he would one day embrace. "I believed," I said, "that destiny would try to claim you, but I hoped, foolishly, that it would pass you by." Joran's grip tightened on the strap of his scabbard. "I won't run from it." "No," I said, "you won't, and that is why it has come for you." Outside the hall, a roar shook the walls deep, ancient, hungry, the sound of wings beating against the frozen air, of fire testing its breath against winter's grip. Drakarion had awakened. Daelora closed her eyes, not in fear, but in communion. "He feels the Ashborn," she whispered. "They call to the old magic. They rise against the balance. He will not allow it." Joran stepped forward, resolve hardening his features. "Then we ride." Now, I took one last look at them, fire and storm, bound by prophecy, standing at the edge of a war older than any map. And for a fleeting heartbeat, I wondered if even the sighted one knew how this tale would end. We rode out just before dawn, and the world, sensing the collision of ancient forces, held its breath as we descended toward the Blackpine Ridge, toward the mist that reeked of death and endings and beginnings, toward the Ashborn who waited for us in silence. The journey toward Blackpine Ridge began beneath a sky bruised by the coming storm. Dawn had not yet claimed the horizon. Instead, a dim gray light pressed against the clouds, as if reluctant to witness what was about to unfold. The wind carried a strange stillness, the kind that settles before a great battle or a burial. Even the horses sensed it. Their ears twitched at sounds, too faint for human ears, their breaths steaming in the cold like restless spirits. Joran rode beside me at the head of our column, shoulders straight, jaw clenched, gaze fixed forward, as if the ridge itself were calling him. I had known him since childhood, when fear could be soothed by a hand on his shoulder or a word of reassurance. Now he hid it deep, burying it beneath duty and destiny, the way only those chosen by prophecy can. Daelora rode on his other side, her pale cloak whipping behind her, her expression unreadable. She looked like a queen carved from winter stone and fire in equal measure. Behind us rode 100 northern riders, veterans, scouts, and young warriors who had volunteered despite my warning that they might not return. The Ashborn were not raiders or wild beasts. They were the remnants of the old world's undoing, a sickness that rose when magics clashed and balance shattered. And balance had been breaking for years. Far above us, Drakarian soared through the dim sky, a massive shadow against the clouds. Every so often he let out a low growl that vibrated through the air, a warning to anything lurking in the mists ahead. The soldiers below glanced up each time, some in awe, some in dread. Dragons inspired both, and they always would. As we rode, Dalara's gaze occasionally drifted toward Joran, studying him, not with suspicion, but with a sort of quiet recognition, like she was observing a truth he had not yet accepted. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the cold air like a blade. "You feel it too, don't you?" Joran didn't answer at first. Instead, he shifted in his saddle, eyes narrowing on the mountains ahead. "Something is calling," he said at last. Not with words, more like a pull, like a storm I know I have to walk into, even if it tears me apart. Daelora nodded slowly. "That is your blood, your heritage. Your heritage. The deeper north knows you. The old magic stirs when you walk." He kept his eyes forward. "I don't want any of it." "Prophecy never asks what we want," she replied. "It only asks what we are." I kept silent, though her words lodged uncomfortably in my chest. I had watched Joran become a man who rejected crowns, titles, and destiny. A man who wanted only freedom and simple truth. But blood, especially ancient blood, cares nothing for simplicity. The ridge grew closer, its jagged silhouette rising from the earth like the spine of a buried monster. Snow clung to the twisted pines in thick clumps, and the air carried a strange acrid scent, smoke mixed with something corrupted. Something wrong. When the mist finally reached us, it curled around our horses' legs like searching fingers. Every man shifted uneasily. I could feel the cold sinking deeper, not the natural bite of winter, but something that seeped into bone, into memory. Joran halted his horse, raising a hand. We stopped as one. The ridge lay before us, draped in a gray fog that seemed almost alive, swirling in unnatural patterns. Silence pressed in, thick and heavy. No birds. No wind. Not even the distant rumble of shifting ice. Only the steady thrum of Drakarian's wings above. Dalora's voice was a whisper. "They are near." Joran scanned the mist. "I can feel them coming." Then the world shifted. At first it was only a shape in the fog, tall, still, almost mistaken for a dead tree. Then another shape, and another. One by one, figures emerged from the mist. Pale silhouettes with elongated limbs and empty hollows where eyes should have been. The Ash-born. Lifeless skin stretched thin over ancient bones, moving with slow, deliberate steps. A ripple of fear passed through our men. Some instinctively reached for their weapons. Some whispered prayers. Some trembled despite themselves. Then the faint glow appeared, soft at first, like embers hidden in snow, but it grew, burning from within their hollow eye sockets, dim orange sparks flickering like dying flames. I had faced wights and spectral beasts in life, but these creatures were something else entirely. They were echoes of magic unraveling, the remnants of a time when the world itself had nearly torn apart. Daelora dismounted without hesitation. "Stay with the riders," Joran hissed to her. "No," she replied quietly. "This is not a battle of steel. This is a test of fire." Her footsteps made no sound as she moved forward, cloak brushing the snow. Drakarian roared above, a deep, resonant thunder that shook the fog. But the Ash-born did not retreat. They lifted their hollow faces, sensing the Fire Queen who dared to stand before them. One of the creatures stepped closer than the rest, its movements jerky but intentional. Its broken jaw opened with a brittle crack. And then, in a voice scraping like gravel sliding over stone, it spoke a single word: balance. Joran's hand flew to his sword. "What do they want?" Daelora didn't look back. "They want what the old magic always demands: equilibrium." Another Ash-born stepped forward, its flickering eyes fixed on Joran, and its skeletal arm lifted, pointing directly at him. "Blood." "Returned," it rasped. "Flame restored." Dalora's face changed, not with fear, but realization. "They are not here to kill us," she whispered. "They are here because something has awakened." Joran stiffened. "Awakened in me?" "No," she said softly. "Awakened near you." Before I could speak, the ground trembled beneath our feet, a low, groaning vibration that rippled through the snow. Horses panicked, rearing. Men grabbed reins. I struggled to keep my seat as the ridge itself seemed to breathe. And then, from deep within the mist behind the Ash-born, came a sound I had only heard described in ancient texts. The sound of cracking stone, the sound of shifting ice, the sound of wings, massive wings unfurling after a long sleep. Joran turned slowly toward the noise, eyes widening, breath catching in his throat. "No," he whispered. "They can't be here. Not yet." Daelora looked at him sharply. "What do you mean, not yet?" Joran's voice trembled in a way I had never heard. "The Jargons I left in the far north," he said, barely audible. "The ones I thought would stay hidden until they grew stronger." The mist parted, and a massive shadow rose behind the Ash-born, larger than even Drakarian, a creature of ancient lineage, scales glistening beneath frost, eyes burning with a cold blue fire. One of Joran's hidden dragons had followed him. Daelora stepped back, stunned. He said they were still young, she whispered. They were, Joran answered, but I didn't raise 'em alone. The land of always winter raised 'em too. The dragon roared, a sound that split the clouds and shook the ridge to its core. Drakarian answered with a roar of his own, circling lower, fire trailing from his jaws. The Ashborn spread out in a line, as if preparing for a ritual rather than combat. Delara looked between the dragons, the undead, and Joran, her face hardened with a mixture of awe and dread. Nearith, she said, turning to me, the world is waking, and if prophecy is already moving its pieces, we may be too late to stop what's coming. Joran stepped forward slowly, eyes locked with the frost-breathing dragon towering before him. Father, he whispered under his breath, what have I unleashed? And the ridge trembled again this time, not from the beasts, but from the ancient magic tearing itself open beneath us. The first true battle of fire and frost had begun.